Hello, everyone. Welcome to MnemoConnect. MnemoConnect is a program that is part of Mnemo channel from Consecutivos. This is a live program that takes place on the fifth Thursday of the month, in those months with 5 Thursdays, always at 7:30 p.m. Brazil time, lasting 1 hour and 30 minutes. MnemoConnect is one of the 5 weekly programs that make up the Mnemo channel, which aims to build a bridge with the international community interested in the topic of successive lives with a conscienciological approach. And for that reason, it is delivered in languages other than Portuguese, for example, English, Spanish, and French. Mnemo Channel is made up of 4 other programs: MnemoCast, an interview program with various teachers and researchers on topics related to seriexological self-research; MnemoBio, this program presents and analyzes biographies of historical figures; MnemoBook, a program dedicated to the analysis and discussion of books that can contribute to the specialty of seriexology; and MnemoScience, a program of debates on advanced topics in seriexology. In today's edition of MnemoConnect, we are going to have a very interesting interview with conscienciology instructor and researcher Mário Luna, who will share his experience in investigating evidences of a past life, a case study. We're going to have a brief vignette, and we'll introduce him after it. Welcome back. Well, our guest today, Mário Luna, holds a degree in Portuguese language and literature. He also studied filmmaking, voice acting, and English, earning a certification from the University of Cambridge. For the past 28 years, he has worked as a language teacher, translator, versor, and English language editor and proofreader. Since 2018, he has been a partner at Idioma Positivo Language School. He has been a conscienciology instructor since 2009 and a Penta practitioner since 2017. Mario, welcome. Thank you very much for your availability and to be with us in this evening.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Weber, for the invitation. I'm really thrilled to be here and share with you my research and ideas about this topic, which is fascinating.
Great. Well, I'm sure it's going to be a very enlightening and interesting interview. I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you tonight, Mario.
Good.
Well,
Likewise.
to start off, I would like you to tell us, who is this personality that you have been studying, and how did you
Mm.
come across this personality? How did you encounter it? How did you discover this personality? Tell us, if you can, a little bit of this very interesting personality.
All right. Yeah, we are talking about George Henry Lewis, actually. Let me just show this is the biography that I'm reading at the moment. George Henry
That's
Lewis.
it.
Yeah, this guy was English. He was philosopher. He was actually polymath. He studied several subjects, and he was remarkable in lots of them. But basically, he was a philosopher, literary critic, journalist, a scientist, and a man of letters. And although he's best known nowadays for his lifelong partnership with and relationship actually with the novelist George Eliot, Lewis was remarkable intellectual in the Victorian age in England, and in his own right, yeah, he did right. He wrote like 34 books about literary criticism, about philosophy. He was also novelist, and he also wrote about psychology and so forth. So his contributions to philosophy and psychology And actually, the popularization of science was really, really remarkable. Even to these days, it is really remembered as one of the most important figures of the Victorian age. And so that this is basically what George Henry Lewes was at his time. But the second question is how I came across this story, which is really interesting. I was actually walking to how can I call it? It was an event. It was a symposium, education symposium, or something like this. It happened in Florida Hotel in Rio, where we used to have our symposium at the time. It was around 2002, 2003 in Rio. I was going to the from conceptuology, right? The symposium education, something like this. And then I was just going to the place, the hotel, where I walked past this street vendor with books on the floor. In Rio, it's very common. People usually sell secondhand books on the floor. And then my eyes just fell on this book for some reason. This book here, George Eliot.
Uh-huh.
That is look at this. It's a biography of 900 pages. George Eliot. And then my eyes fell on this, and I got like very interested. I had never heard of her. I had never read anything, even though she's a very famous writer, British writer. I had never read anything from George Eliot. It was a completely unknown. But then the book really caught my attention, and I bought the book, and I started reading this book. Um, Halfway through it, I saw this picture here. I really, this is her, right? This is a picture.
Uh-huh.
Marian Evans. It's an important story to say that Marian Evans was her real name, because this is just a cover name, right? George Eliot. Why a male name? Because at the time, Victorian age in England, it was very hard for a woman to publish books, right? So they had a hard time with this, and it was easier for her to use a male name to publish and actually pretend he was a writer, a man,
Mhm.
not a woman. And that was how she managed to publish his first book as a man, George Eliot. And then later he would just clarify that she was a woman actually,
Uh-huh.
but at the moment she was a man. And just she kept this name for a long time. You see, her whole story, literary story, was with as George Eliot, which is really interesting. But that was the difficulty. But her name was Marian Evans, and Marian Evans was from the bourgeois class. She was from a very rich family at the time. Her father was a wealthy man. The family was very better off. They live in a very good house and so forth. And okay, this is something I have to tell you just after what I'm going to say now, not to have this to talk at cross purpose here. So, and then I was reading this book. Halfway through it, exactly halfway through it, I came across this picture here, which is
Uh-huh.
a picture of George Henry Lewes
George Henry Lewis. Uh-huh.
in 1959 with
1859.
1850, 19, not 19,
Yeah.
1859. And the picture was with his dog. And I look at this picture, and the first thing, Weber, was a kind of emotional reaction, so to speak, because it affected me in a way that it was completely unheard of. I had never felt something like that before. I look at the dog, and I said, "This is my dog." Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
this is my dog. But that was a very awkward feeling because I was definitely not familiar with anything from um, George Henry Lewes or George Eliot. And I thought, like, he's my dog. And then from the dog, I started to look at him. And this emotion just grew up to something more like personal, And it came to my mind like, I can't believe that I'm feeling like I was him.
Mhm.
I was putting myself in his body and his the way he was sitting, this desk, and all these environments. That was a very awkward feeling. Then I said, okay, there must be something here. I can't believe, I still don't. But I've been studying this guy since then, like 2005. But I still believe I was not him. I'm trying to convince myself I was not him. But the the facts are telling me, have a second thought. Have a second thought about it, because there is something there. And little by little, it's like putting a brick on the other brick, and you start building this house. And then you realize that you in the beginning I had no idea of about how to do it, how to build up evidences, or how to um, produce these evidences, and the things that you are really study material, I'd say. But later by later, you put in these bricks because you start reading, the biography and the facts and everything, and then you get connected. You are, slowly getting connected more and more, and things starts saying something different to you, but never enough, right? And then you are always waiting for new evidences. And then here I have also another picture that really caught my attention, that was really strong for me, was to see his tomb at Highgate in London. He was buried here at Highgate Cemetery
Mhm.
in London. This picture also caused me kind of the emotions stirring inside. Then I started from this point, and so I started reading and really getting connected with his story, and the things that he went through, the personality, until I start reading this book here. Then the connections start being more evident and clear to me. So this is basically how things started.
Uh-huh.
Right?
In before that, Mario, have you ever thought of, past lives or researching past lives, of the possibility of you being a personality of the past? How did you
Well,
uh,
the thing is, I've never been interested in knowing exactly who I was in a past life. Never, never. Um, as I said, it was really, um, it caught me by surprise. I'm still today uh, get involved with I'm in awe with this kind of the information I have. I'm still in awe
Mhm.
with it. Sometimes I go like, how it can't be, but it is. There is a strong connection. I was talking about this with a friend, and I said, okay, if I was not George Henry Lewis, definitely he's my doppelganger.
Uh-huh.
He's the kind of person that you're like, this guy acts like me, this thinks like me, and I would tell you why, and giving you details about how we are getting connected in behavior and in manners and the way of thinking, the values, principles, and all this stuff. This is absolutely stunning for me, because you don't find someone so like you, so similar. He was really the only one. And these things that I start reading about him really thrilled me to go deeper in this research, go deeper and deeper and deeper, because it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like it's like you are collecting stickers in an album, and then you
Uh-huh.
get a sticker that you go like, oh, this sticker goes with this page with this topic. Oh, that's nice. I found it. And then you go, different topics. Then you find another sticker, and you go like with this, and you start having the full picture of the situation, or the full picture of your connections, right? And the reason why these connections is happening as well. So it's a kind of craftsmanship, that
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
little by little are gathering information and putting in the big picture, and this picture starts bringing you images and say, oh great, this is, I know that this is what I think. But let's go. I think that this is an introduction. Of course, I'm going to have it in more
Mhm.
detail in our conversation today.
Okay, well, feel free, Mario. This conversation is very interesting already. Um, I was going to ask you, um, well, at what point uh, did you begin to think this hypothesis was
Mhm.
worth investigating seriously? It was when you had this, impact, emotional, and identification with the picture that you saw, or it was later on after you collected some other evidences or some other, facts that actually resonate with you. Um, when was it?
Yeah. Uh, the first point was a picture,
Uh-huh.
and that awkward feeling.
Hmm.
That was really awkward. It was really something that I have never felt before. And
Uh-huh.
the fact that I had went through that awkwardness, when I saw the picture, it it lit up a light, like there's something there. Of course it happens. No, it was not the beginning of the 20s, the 2000. No, it was, I thought it was later, because I was already a teacher for conscientiology. And I know exactly, but we had this education symposium at the Florida Hotel in Rio de Janeiro. I think it was around 2009, 2010, around this time. I was already a teacher, so I was also already into conscientiological studies. So, it was really interesting for me to have this experience, retrocognitive experience. Um, but that feeling was a kind of the, a definite connection. It was an ultimate connection that linked me to the personality. From that point on, I was connected. I was like, it's like you found something. You find someone
Hmm.
you have a very strong connection with, and you cannot go away from this person. You cannot get away from that feeling. So I just kept that thing. And so from that point on, okay, then I read a biography, and I had more information about his life and about their lives together, his life together with George Eliot. And the thing was going deeper and deeper. But actually, in the beginning, it was just a cognitive process, right? I was just collecting information, and of course getting familiar with those things. Um, so in the first moment was basically this, collecting information. Uh, Parapsychically speaking, in the dynamics and field courses, one thing that people usually see in my psychosphere is this aristocracy, um, personality.
Hmm.
People say Lord, but it's not Lord, because Lord is a royal title. It's not, doesn't have to do with a royal title. It's aristocracy thing.
Hmm.
And people say, oh, we say you're a lord, you're a lord, a lord, a lord. They say it's a very common perception of people.
Hmm.
Um, and I see myself as well in some retrocognitive images, like screen, mental screen, right?
Hmm.
In this kind of circle, in the aristocracy circle, which is very familiar to
Hmm.
me. Because actually, when you get connected with the past life personality, you actually recover the whole package, right?
Hmm.
You recover what's good, what's not good. You
Hmm.
recover strong traits, weak traits, and absent traits in the whole package, right? So,
Hmm.
and
Uh-huh.
then you see yourself, of course, right, in this kind of environment, and which is a very sophisticated environment. They were from a high society circle, not only in terms of the social, right, circle, but also artistic and literary. George Eliot and George Henry Lewes used to travel to France to meet um, famous people, right? They used to go to, for example, Franz Liszt concert. He was friend of Franz Liszt, so the circle was very aristocrat, and big people see this in the experience of the dynamics, right? People say, "Oh, I saw a lord, I saw a lord," and so this is one thing, and also some images that I recollected from I could see and recollect from this time also, but not something very clear, parapsychically speaking, right? Parapsychically speaking, I didn't have much um, information like images or retrocognitive or retrocognition things like this. Okay, that's right. This is basically what happens, right? So, but then I started reading this biography. That was the first time, because it's not very common to find biographies of George Henry Lewis here. It's actually an edition of 1968, an American edition. I was lucky to find it at Amazon. So, but it's a rare thing. It's not very common to find.
Yeah.
Right, but his biographies. So I started reading his biography, and this changed a lot. And I'm going to tell you why it changed a lot, because that actually was his biography about himself, about his behavior, the way he thought, and principles, values, and so forth. But then, yeah. So after this, I really, I was not quite into getting too deep into it. Like, I'm not going to find information about it. I think it's fine. No, I don't want to meddle with this. It's just letting the past. But and then this is something that it's very interesting, and it's important to be said here. When we deal with the past, we deal with the present, and the past is now, is still now, right? Especially when you expresses yourself, is still very drenched with your personality from the past. It's not like I was that person and that's in the past. I'm a completely different kind of person. No.
Yeah.
I start to find that George Henry Lewis is still here.
It may look like it's very far away, but it's actually really close to our manifestation, right?
Our past life is our present life. It's all together. This is what something I learned, that our past life is our present life, and this was really what connected me. Now okay, do you have any other question? I because now I start with the synchronicities and everything that really led me to say this to you now.
Okay. I have just like to add a quick comment. I'm not following the script right now because I think that this conversation is much more interesting than following a script. But one thing that it's evident when we talk to you, when you speak English, is your English British accent, right? And once we are talking, and you mentioned that you actually, got, you looked for. I mean, it was natural. Actually, it was not something you were trying hard to sound like, but it was naturally, express yourself, with this British accent or British tone. And this is something that is really,
it's one of the
one thing that connects you with George Henry Lewis.
And it's a funny story. There's a funny story behind it, because actually from basic to up intermediate, I studied at the American in school. My teachers say get in the car and it's really what the world service is great. So let's get in and get in out of it. What? And then I studied with this American accent into up intermediate, via advanced, right? And then I decided to do the CPE, which is the Cambridge Proficiency Examination. Then I moved to a British school, and I studied with the American with a English teacher and a Scottish teacher, Mr. Bill. I would never forget this man, because he has a key role in this my con recovery, right? And he had a very British accent, and my teacher too. And I started like speaking world and service and work and park and get in, get out. I was speaking like this, and then when I heard them, there was another click. That was the in this story was the second strongest click I had, because I said, this is my English, you know, like this is the English I want to speak. This is my English, and I want to recover that. And it was a very strong decision that from that point on, I studied 2 years at Cultura Inglesa, and I did the examination at Cambridge University. And then we were, preparing ourselves for the examination. So it was for 2 years. And then I really started having a full immersion in British English, because I have to recover that. I have to recover that. And then I start just reading books in English and just watching films in English. That was very, very strong connection with the English language. And of course, if you study for the Cambridge examination, you also have to dive into the culture
Culture,
of
yeah.
the English culture. So you have to understand more of the British way of life, Victorian age, and so forth, the Industrial Revolution, blah 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 blah, and then you get deep into it. And I was fascinated. I had never thought of it, because when I was studying at American English, British English for me was like something from other world. Didn't even cross my mind to speak like them, And then when I went to, and I had these teachers, they kind of opened, I came my mind, and then I changed. But then it was, as I said, the whole package, right? The accents, but also the culture, and also the feeling of belonging.
Mhm.
Feeling of belonging.
It's the
Uh,
identification,
exactly. A
with
very
yeah.
strong identification with,
Mhm.
the culture, with the
Mhm.
country, with the whole thing. Then it
Mhm.
comes with the whole thing. That was the second very interesting thing to say, because I totally went to the English, accent. And of course, today I kind of oscillate, but my stepdaughter lives in America. My granddaughters are Americans, the two girls. And when we go
Mhm.
to visit them, if I stay there for 1 month, I can pick up the accent very easily, the American
Mhm.
accent. But yeah, because I'm like a sponge. It happens even in Portuguese, right? If I talk too much with my friends from Rio Grande do Sul, I possibly get the Gaúcho's accent, because I have a very musical ear. So I catch the accent, but the American accent is just temporary, like when I
Uh-huh.
leave,
Mhm.
I come back to the English accent. Yeah, this is another very strong connection
Mhm.
with him. Any question?
Uh, well, I understand. It's a curiosity. I'm still off the script here.
Right. That's good. That's
Curiosity,
good.
because I understand that George Lewis studied medicine and biology.
Hmm.
Did you also get some, idea or interest in, these science topics, or these, quite different, from your academic career in this personal, in this life, this present life?
Okay, your question allows me to just read something here, because it's very interesting. This guy is a polymath. Actually, he's
Hmm.
mentioned here in the
Hmm.
Peter Buck book, the polymath, right?
Who's
George Henry
also
Lewis.
an
Yeah,
English an English
yeah. This is a
historian.
Portuguese version, right? But the
Hmm.
polymath is here. So Peter Buck mentions George Henry Lewis between the 500 polymath of the world. Okay, he was very versatile, right? And he was actually journalist, editor, critic, novelist, dramatist, actor, biographer, scientist, philosopher, and psychologist. And then you ask, Mario, are you interested in the whole thing? All of this subject? I said, absolutely yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely yes. For example, journalist. Okay, I never studied journalism, but actually I wrote for blogs for more than 10 years. I had two blogs and I write to, investigation and bring up news, and writing was all my cup of tea. Then
Mm-hmm.
editor, critic, novelist, yes. Um, Dramatist, not so much. I'm not. Actor, no. I tried to be an actor when I was at school, but I'm too phony. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
succeed. I was
Mm-hmm.
very phony, so no one
But
will want me as an actor.
you
But
you did something like in your mini curriculum. Let me just check here.
filmmaking, cinema. I studied
Filmmaking,
cinema.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
studied cinema. Uh, I
Mhm.
think I could be an actor if I tried, but actually, no. That was a
And
no
voice
no.
acting. Voice acting.
Voice acting, and voice acting is when you
Yeah, yeah.
dubbing. Yeah, then
But
I
you
yeah.
actually you have to interpret a character, a role. You have to play a role, right?
Yes,
Even if it's
definitely
just
yes.
just speaking, just voice, but it's still a role you play, right?
Yes, and I studied this. I was at a school studying voice acting for 6 months. Then I was, and then I saw, that's something that you are very interested in, but then, it just dawned on you that no, it's not my lane anymore. That's fine.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
like it, but sometimes you have to filter, and no, 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 it's not that. But actually, something that interests me as well. Philosopher, yes, I love philosophy. Also psychologist, and there is something very interesting because he wanted to be a doctor. John Hughes, right? He wanted to be a doctor, and he tried to study medicine, but he didn't handle with human suffering.
uh-huh.
And he says that he supposedly gave up medicine because he could not stand the spectacle of human suffering. And this is another thing that matches
Mhm,
my personality. I envy doctors. I would like to have been a doctor because I admire a doctor so much because they take care of people. I would like to work with this, but I can't stand human suffering. I can't stand it. When someone is in pain, it really disturbs me. And I couldn't also dissecate a corpse. I don't have this kind of emotion, to study medicine. And this was something that I admire a doctor a lot, but I could never have been a doctor because of this, you know.
mhm.
Absolutely the same reason, That was I had this before reading Misery, and then I just highlighted here
Uh-huh.
all the synchronicities, all the things that connected me with him. And this is the moment, Weber, that I'd like to tell you some techniques I used.
Mhm,
Um, the first one is spontaneous retrocognition. Yeah, as I said, I didn't have much, but I had images right in my mental screen of scenes of England in the 19th century. Apart from that, I have information from other people saying what they saw in my psychosphere or when they
mhm,
saw in this holobiography that
mhm.
was visible, parapsychically speaking, during the dynamics, right? So spontaneous images of this aristocrat that they reported as lord, being a lord, but actually he was not a lord. Actually, I knew it was not a
We
lord, but aristocrat. Yeah.
we
So
also
it was
have
information
feed,
from people.
feedback from one of the our
You do
audience.
like a lord, Sr. Mario. Eduardo. Oh, thank you. That I'm not sure whether it's good or bad. I really don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
knowing myself, and I'm
Uh-huh.
very, I have a very popular spirit. So no, this hotness of a lord I don't have anymore. But actually, it sometimes expresses in terms of thoughtsanity. You know,
Mhm.
sometimes you have the 13s of this haughtiness, you know, being
Mhm.
haughty, like, you know,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
say, no, Mario, stop that.
Mhm.
It's not good. Because, yeah, you know, you get the whole package.
Yeah.
So this is one thing. The other one was a self-retrocognitive research technique.
Mhm.
This is what I'm saying, what I'm doing here,
Mhm.
right? So if you have any connection, feeling, or things that connect you with personalities from the past, the best thing is for you to go to the biography and to read about the person, or not only read the biography of the person, but also the books of this person, right?
Mhm.
John
Yeah.
Hill Hughes wrote John Hill Hughes wrote 34 books.
34.
Of
Mhm.
course, I haven't read all of them, but I am at the moment reading his biography, which is more important for me. But I also have um, two other books, right, by him, which is Rose, Blanche, and Violet, which is a novel, and The
Mhm.
Principle of Success in Literature.
Mhm.
But he was an specialist in Git,
Mhm.
and to feel more connected, I bought this book, Escritos sobre a Ciência da Natureza, de Git.
Mhm.
So I'm going to research by reading this and feel connected with Git. But actually, Git was kind of forgotten thing. I
Mhm.
don't have much connection with Git, but I bought this book just to see if I can feel something, or if some connection is visible. Um, but the best thing is this: for you to collect by reading what this person that you supposedly think you were, if they wrote, if they produced books or biographies, things like this. So it's one very interesting technique, because this is the moment that you are feeling this connection or not. So you can confirm or discard. Um, Another one is the analysis of affinities and interest. Let me just have here. I just noted some things. For example, through this technique of the analysis of affinity, uh, I found affinity, of course, with this aristocratic circle, because it's the whole package. You know, it's the music, it's the book you read, it's the authors you read. So you have connections with this. Um, this is, in my view, like something you may find some weak traits.
Mhm.
Um, this haughtiness, this feeling of being haughty, um, a kind of social isolation as well. But
Mhm.
there is something in his character, and has a lot to do with me, and not so much connected with this kind of aristocrat flair. He was not quite into it, and I'm gonna tell you how. So this is something that, okay, there is a connection. uh Multiple interests, it was another thing that I noted down as we match. Versatility and multiple interests. There was a time in my life that I thought that it was a kind of a butterfly researcher. I don't know if I say this in English, but anyway, it's a butterfly researcher. It's when you research about lots
Yeah.
of things. You are studying lots of things, totally disconnected, but everything is so
And superficially, and not the deep
exactly,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you see that even though he studied several things, these things were all in the human side. They were human sciences. He was not from exact.
Mhm.
He was not a man of exact. He was a
Mhm.
very empirical scientist,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
he kind of revolutionized scientific thought of that time. And I'm going to tell you how. But
Mhm.
it's very interesting to see that he was entirely ingrained into this in this area, right? it was rooted in the human science, not in the exact science. For me, exact science are things from all the planet, you know.
Uh-huh.
I definitely not connected. Was a terrible student of physics, biology, chemistry, and mathematics. I was horrible. I was just studied to pass the year, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
I failed more than anyone else. But this is really something that it's also connects me with this guy.
Uh-huh.
And what else? But multiple interests. Yeah. And one thing that was very interesting was the fact that I had one graduation in this life. Graduation, not mastery, not post graduation, not graduation, not
Mhm.
postgraduate or post, no, just graduation. Portuguese and literature. I didn't do English because I had already the Cambridge certification, so I didn't need it. But I was Portuguese and literature, and at university. But um, I studied several other things. It was different things, and George Henry Lewis didn't have any graduation. He
Mhm.
was a self learner.
Mhm.
And this is absolutely incredible how this guy managed to be the head, one of the
Mhm.
the heads of the Victorian age,
Mhm.
being being a self learner.
Mhm.
It's absolutely amazing because
Yeah.
he talked about with the people from academy like you're wrong, you are
Mhm.
wrong. He said you are wrong, and he
Mhm.
discussed and he defended. He argued his ideas with very important scholars at the time,
Mhm.
and he was very his thoughts was very empirical, right? He
Mhm.
said what cannot be proven, what you it's only told, it's just theory. It doesn't
Mhm.
have any kind of value, but you
Mhm.
must things must be practical.
Mhm.
And this is something that I still think in terms of scientific production, right?
Mhm.
Things needs to be practical. That's the reason why conscientiology was so important to me, because I finally found a science that is based on self-experimentation. And another thing that really um, you know it was really amazing for me was to think that George Henry Lewis used to say in 1815 1940 that there, there wasn't an absolutely truth. He said there was a cutting edge truth or leading edge truth. So he was talking about something that we are talking about today in conscientiology. There is no absolutely truth. That truth is something dynamic. Truth changes, and truth must change over time with at the end of every experiment, right? So truth is something in motion, and he used to say that. So if you believe in something for 100 years, this truth is totally compromised. So you have to see people get ideas and experiments get renewed. And this is what makes science alive. He used to say
Mhm.
this kind of thing in the middle of the 19th century. Another thing was he was spiritualized, but he said, unfortunately, the spirituality today is not scientific, but
Mhm.
there should be a science to study the spirituality in the future. Just as Balzac had said,
Mhm.
Balzac said that too. There should be a science to study the spirituality. And that was the idea of George Henry Lewis as well. He said, okay, the spirituality must be studied seriously as a science. So this was things that he used to say. You
Maybe
know, I,
because of this approach, he uh, had interested in psychology as well, right?
yes,
Mhm.
and psychology and philosophy too.
Mhm.
Because he used to talk about this idea about truth. You
Mhm.
know, that truth is something in motion. It's not something stagnated. And he criticized a lot the dogmas and the religious things, and it was very okay, I'm going to say that it was strange or totally inappropriate in that time because it was in the Victorian age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was totally how is it, provocative. He was
Uh-huh.
provocative because he had no graduation, but he produced lots of amazing things in terms of books and everything, ideas that really astonished, the scientists of that time, and it was very respected because of that in the academic circles. Strangely, not being an academic person, but he had this influence because of his ideas. But not only that, he was really provocative in the kind of relationship that he had with George Eliot,
Mm-hmm.
because George Eliot was from a bourgeois family. Her family was very rich, and her house was a mansion. I was
Mm-hmm.
watching a documentary about the George Eliot's family's house, and it's like a palace, And she was very rich, and her father was a prominent person in the Victorian circles and so forth. And then George Eliot was married and he had 4 kids
Mm-hmm.
and he was married. And when he meets George Eliot, he fell in love with her,
Mm-hmm.
and they fell in love with each other. And they started having this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the moment in 1854, the moment that he decides to leave his wife, and start the relationship with George Eliot. At the time, this was a scandal
Yeah.
because you couldn't get divorced in the Victorian age. You couldn't get divorced, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I think that he got a kind of interprison with his wife. Why? Because he had the George Eliot as a new partner, and
Mm-hmm.
he starts having this relationship with George Eliot totally off record.
And
They couldn't get married.
and still married to the previous wife, right?
Yeah, he was attached to his previous wife. He couldn't get divorced, and his
Mm-hmm.
wife got married,
Mm-hmm.
stayed married. So she couldn't marry again,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason why I thought it was a kind of interprison,
Mm-hmm.
because that was not good, because
Mm-hmm.
his wife stayed, alone. I don't know if she had any kind of relationship with another
Relationship.
man. Yes, but yeah, she was stuck to him.
Mm-hmm.
She was stuck to him. She couldn't get rid of him. She was married, and
Mm-hmm.
if she had a kind of relationship, it could be totally, offbeat as the one George Eliot had with George Henry Lewis, and they lived like this. All society at that time was criticizing them. It was actually crashing down on them because that was something,
Scandalous.
unimaginable. Yeah, it was a
Yeah. Yeah.
scandal. And then I found another connection with my story in this life,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, my wife is, my wife and I got together in Recife. I'm from Recife, and
Mm-hmm.
she was living there at the time. She had come from France, and she had an experience of 10 years living in France. So we met in the hotel. Oh, there is another thing I did in my life, to work in
Uh-huh.
hotel.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and I came to be a manager, hotel manager in Búzios, right? When later
Mm-hmm.
we moved to Búzios, but at the time we met in Recife,
Mm-hmm.
and she had come from France, and I got absolutely flabbergasted by the things that she told me about. She had
Mm-hmm.
studied at Sorbonne. Her teacher was um, Bourdieu.
Mm-hmm.
These great names of the French philosophy, anthropology, and all the archaeology.
Sociology. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sociology, and she had classes with Gilberto Freire and Foucault and all these guys. I said, wow, that was kind of marvelous. We talked about, and I was totally in love with her, and that
Mm-hmm.
was how we got connected, right? So she was my boss, of course. Not of course, because actually that was totally by chance. But she was my boss. She was the manager of the reception. I was concierge, so we got together. But she had recently separated from her husband, and we were in Recife, and her husband had moved to Rio. But what happened was they didn't divorce. They didn't get divorced. They didn't separate it, and this situation would continue for almost 15 years.
Wow.
We were together. We couldn't get married because her husband had moved to Rio and we were in Recife. And
Mm-hmm.
then in 1992, in January of 1992, we moved to Búzios because
Mm-hmm.
actually my sister-in-law knew an entrepreneur in Búzios that he needed people in hotel. We had been working in hotel for quite a
Mm-hmm.
long time, so we were experienced in hotels. So kind of way, we were imported right from
Mm-hmm.
Recife to Búzios. But then we lived more than this, Weber. We lived together for 20 years without being married because
Mm-hmm.
she was married. Because she was married.
Mm-hmm.
What a
It's very,
coincidence!
yeah, it's quite uncommon.
It's
I
quite
mean,
uncommon.
maybe more common than I think, but for me, it's like it's not really a common situation to
No,
uh, to be married to someone that is already married, like married
married.
for
Yeah,
life.
she was
Yeah,
married because yeah,
yeah.
officially married,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
She was separated from her
yeah.
husband, but they were officially married. So actually, we moved to Búzios, and then we moved to Rio de Janeiro,
Mm-hmm.
and then we started working in hotels in Rio. But it was like 1996. The divorce happened 10 or 12 years later only. So we kind of lived 20, 25 years. I think these years are changing because I'm not very clear with my mind with this. But actually it was, yeah, like 20 years, 20 something. We lived together with her being married. And her husband was a nice person. He used to visit us because actually my granddaughter, no, my stepdaughter was her daughter, his daughter, and he used to visit us to see her. And we had a very good relationship. He was a very nice guy. He decimated some years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
he is in my penta. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really connected with him in my penta. He was a very nice guy. He was a fantastic person, but no interest. Just let it go with the marriage. They didn't get divorced. So that was another thing that happened. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much like my
Uh-huh.
friend,
Yeah,
my friend
like
George
George.
Henry.
George.
And
And the
that's
period of
another
time,
thing.
the period of time was quite similar as well because uh, George Henry Lewis and George Eliot and sorry,
Marian
Mary,
Evans.
Marian Evans,
Yeah,
they lived together for around 25 years as well, 24 to 25 years, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Wha-
Well, and he died
Mhm.
at a very early age. I mean, not at the time, right? But today,
Mhm.
61 years old is still. I'm 62. I'm so young. I feel so
Mhm.
young.
Mhm.
But at the time, 61 was not that young. But he
Mhm.
had a cardiac arrest and he
Mhm.
died of heart problems, right?
Mhm.
And then he dies in 1878. He was born in
Mhm.
1817 and he dies in 1878. He's buried in Highgate in London. Yeah, but this that was, well, if we consider
Mhm.
nowadays, well, someone at the age of 61 is not that old.
Mhm.
But anyway, that was another thing. Uh, Another thing that I really collected here was his he valued a lot the family. He wanted, well, since he was an early age, he thought of having a family with lots of kids, and he had like 5 kids, but one passed away, so he had 4. So he built a big family. That was not my case. But I remember when I was a kid, they say, What do you want to do when you grow up?" I used to say, "I want to be an architect and I have a big family." That was my idea when I was a kid. So this idea of having a big family. But of course, I didn't have a big family. I had a stepdaughter and a son. Because um, uh, we have a son with I have a son with my wife. So it was a very small family. But I had this idea when I was a young, of having a big family. I want to have a big family. I want to have many children, things like that. I want to have pets and everything. So I had this kind of, you know, um, the ideal family for me was a family with many kids and pets in the house. So I had this idea, but that was something that really connects with his values too of having a family.
Mario, how do you differentiate, a strong evidence from, weak evidence, or, for instance, a wishful thinking, or
Mhm.
it's a simple and, not important coincidence, between.
Uh, okay, let me tell you something. The things are um, catching me by surprise, actually. I don't
Mhm,
have any kind of expectations to
mhm,
find a final answer. Yes, I
mhm,
was, or no, I wasn't.
mhm,
What really interests me and really fascinates me is the fact that we can connect with a personality um, who you share so many things in common, uh, and this person could be you.
mhm,
This idea is really intriguing
mhm,
and thrilling for
mhm,
me. You know, it thrills me to go forward with this, just to find more about this personality.
mhm,
This man, who was this man? The way he thought, what he said, I would say, what he thought, I would think. Do you understand this?
mhm,
There is something very interesting about it. Okay, if I'm just rambling, let me know. Let's say, Mar, you didn't answer my question because I sometimes tend to ramble with my with my
uh-huh,
things here.
yeah,
Right. Um, I was giving a class to one student, and I was talking about him. I was talking about George Henry Lewis. And no, I was not talking about Henry Lewis. No, 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 no. Rewind it. I was
yeah,
giving a class with this student, and I was talking about the importance of teachers, the importance I see in teachers. Um, for me, teachers have the responsibility um, to educate people and to make people more intelligent, to make people more well informed, to make people better people, right? So you have the responsibility of changing the behavior of people by giving them more information, make them more critical. This is the role is in being a teacher, right? A teacher doesn't only pass knowledge, but also they kind of shape personalities. So to me, it's very important to say that, and and I don't understand, for example, the teacher ego. Oh, not ego. The ego is ego is common for everyone, but teacher big ego when people have this kind of arrogance of knowledge. I don't understand that. For me, it's totally nonsense. But I can understand how people can be like that because actually, if you are intelligent, if you got the information, then you can think you are kind of
yeah,
the guy, the
yeah,
guy.
special, or yeah.
We were talking about this and I say I don't understand how people can have this kind of arrogance of knowledge. So I really don't understand, um, because I think that if you think that people don't know as much as you do, your responsibility is to make them know as much as you do. This
Mhm,
responsibility, of course, not in everything, but for example, I'm giving classes of conscientiology. If I am in the classroom teaching people, my responsibility is, listen, I'm talking about, okay, sleep paralysis. So I know this about sleep paralysis. I studied to give you this lesson, but at the end of this class, I know you to know
mhm,
about sleep paralysis as much as I do,
mhm,
at least as much as I'm telling now. The information I'm giving to you must be absorbed. Like,
mhm,
this is my responsibility, is to pass that knowledge of
mhm,
that class, of that subject, right? This is my responsibility. And as a teacher, we have one technique, which is the technique of control. You control the knowledge. Okay, you ask me, Mario, what is this? And I say, Weber, is this, and that. There is this and the examples here, evidence is here, pa 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 pa. There is this. Did you understand? Yes.
Mhm.
And then I ask you, okay, do you have an experience concerning this, or have you read something about it, or do you have something to say about it? I want to make sure that what I taught you was grabbed,
Mhm.
right? This is kind of control. And
Mhm.
when students show that they learned, they got the
Mhm.
information across, then I say, great, let's go to the next step. So I think that this is the responsibility we have.
Mhm.
So we want to make people as intelligent as you are, and not the contrary. I was talking about it with my students, and then I was watching a documentary about George Eliot and George Henry Lewis, and I'm going to read the quotation that I got about this topic. Let me see. Here, I noted it down. Just a sec. Uh, that he says exactly about this. Just a sec. Okay. The next day, the following day, I had talked with my student about this. I read, um, if you feel yourself to be above the mass, right? If you feel that you are, the big teacher, above the mass, above people, speak so as to raise the mass to the height of your argument. This is what George Henry said. When I read it, I sent this to my students and I said, we were talking about this yesterday, weren't we? If you feel yourself to be above the mass, you have to think you know too much. Speak as to raise the mass to the height of your argument. And this was the, because you have layers in this research. The first layer is how emotionally you are connected with a person, what kind of feelings you share, or what kind of feelings this topic fosters in you, produces in you. You feel your connection. The second layer is the parapsychic layer. So all the information that you can have from retrocognitive projections or dynamics or what people say is very important, not what you say, but what people say. And then you start practicing these dynamics with people reporting what they saw in your psychosphere. And then say, oh, I saw this, I saw that. Then you start shaping more information about this. Very important, the parapsychic. And the other layer is principles and values. What are your principles and values? Do they have the same kind of principles and values with that personality? Listen, I'm contextualizing personality from the 19th century. Maybe if I was studying something from the first century or the second century, it would be something completely different because we changed a lot. I imagine that we were a totally different person at that time. But I'm talking about something from the 19th century, so it cannot be so different.
So distant, yeah.
Some skills may have may have been recollected in this life. No, like I had a this guy spoke French,
Mhm.
but I don't speak French in this life, but I have a very good pronunciation when I
Mhm.
read French. So
Mhm.
my wife speaks French perfectly, and she said, "Your accent's perfect. You just need to speak French." I say, "Yes, this is something I want to learn."
Mhm.
But he had also this connection with France.
Mhm.
But you may not recover this unit of information from one life in terms of languages. You may lose. We have examples of this
Yeah.
in our with our
Yeah.
friends. That's fine. You can lose for some reason, right? But one basic reason that I think I recovered the English specifically was because of the fact that that would be my work. I pay my bills with English.
Uh-huh.
That would be my profession. It has been my profession for 28 years. So I am an English teacher. So And now my practice is 100% based on the internationalization of conscientiology, right? And when I see it now, so I think that that's the reason why I recovered the language that much, you know, because, I wanted to be a good teacher. I wanted to know the language very well.
Mhm.
So, and now I see myself in this praxis connected to English. So, and I think that I speak English like that actually not because I have been a teacher, but because of my praxis, evolutionarily speaking. Do you understand?
Mhm.
I think it's very
Yeah.
strongly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's very strongly. We are just starting a new movement in conscientiology. We are like in this um, exogenous movement, right? And I believe that it would be very important for us to have dialogues with people from other institutions, from
International.
other
Yeah.
paradigms, yes, internationally speaking.
Mhm.
So today, for example, I feel a lot 100% more ready to do this work like 10 years, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I think that definitely English was very important for me to have recovered in this life because of the work I had to do.
Mhm.
Professionally speaking, of course, and it's a fantastic work because I give 7 8 classes a day. I love it, but also because of the work I have to do with conscientiology. I say that we work in the export department.
Uh-huh.
It's not in the internationalization department. We work in export department. So
Mhm.
I want to export conscientiology, globally speaking. So it's it's something very ambitious, but
Mhm.
I don't like to think inside the box. This is something that it's not me. I want to open this box and talk to other boxes, and I think that this is the moment for us to be doing this. So this is one of the
Mhm.
reasons I think that I recollected English that that way, and it's you know good. This is one thing to do. Yeah.
Great. Actually, now, well, taking advantage of the topic, you bring proaxis and existential program. Uh, do you think, or how did this research of this hypothesis of previous personality, a retropersonality,
Mhm.
how did it impact your view of your own praxis, or did this research changed, impacted somehow positively or negatively, or what was the impact of this research in your
Mhm.
ideal and your idea of praxis of your existential program?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think that we are molded to do our praxis here with our strong traits. So we have to use all of the strong traits we have to do it. And one of my strong traits is dealing with is having this skill for languages.
Mhm.
I've always loved learning language. I used to speak German, but actually kind of lost it. But I can recover that. But I used to speak German and Spanish
Mhm.
too. I like to learn English. French is one of the languages I want to learn. It's in my bucket list.
Mhm.
Until I pass, I want to learn French, and I will. So language is something that really encourages me to do things. So I think it's very very important. It's part of the practice. But actually, I'm really focused on what I can do with English
Mhm.
because this is so why English? Because you can speak globally
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
English, right? Um, why English? The other day, we had a friend of us who said, "You always do things in English." I said, "Yes, my dear, because I can speak with someone in Nepal, in
Mhm.
Iraqi, in Oman, Yemen, Germany, and Finland with English. So the more the merrier."
Yeah.
The more the merrier. So we
Mhm.
can communicate globally with English.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't happen with Spanish and any other language. Our Chinese is very well spoken. Yes, that's right. But in China,
Mhm.
we are now with a movement with the Chinese. That's fine. Maybe in a couple of decades or 100 years, we have Chinese dominating the marketing and the business thing, and then it's really spread out as language. But at the moment,
Mhm.
it's English. We
Mhm.
have to use the resources, the more efficient. Well, as long as we know. So it's important that we communicate with English, and this is really connects me um, with the praxis, right? Because as I said, it's directly connected to spreading out conscientiology. I do want to do this job, and I think we are on the right track now, right? We are starting this podcast Cosmovision with representation, and the idea is to have something interparadigmatic, institutional, right?
Mhm.
So I want to travel next year to talk to people in all institutions. I want to make, a reportage with them, hear them, what they are doing, just to know. Yeah, we are here, we are from consensuology. This is a new science, very interesting. So you should know more about it, right? Just to exchange information, things. So I'm basically on this. So I think in terms of praxis, English for me is very worthy, very, very important. I wouldn't be in my praxis if I didn't speak English. As simple as that. I wouldn't.
Great.
I wouldn't be totally off track, you know.
Mhm.
And that was very interesting to say that when I was at school, my father didn't have money to pay for my school. I was an athlete. That was another thing that I did when I was an adolescent. I was a record holder for 15 years in high jump athletics. So I thought
Mhm.
about professionalizing myself, but actually I put it out of my mind because I couldn't professionalize myself in sports because that was not the point. But actually, at the time, I used to do it. I was a high jumper, and I had a scholarship at school. My father
Mhm.
didn't have
Mhm.
money to pay my school, or my father didn't have money to pay my university. So I
Mhm.
I tried to go for a state university. But my father had money to do one thing. He had money to pay my English course,
Uh-huh.
and that was absolutely something that he did totally accurate to me because that's what I needed. I needed that my father paid my English course. And
Mhm.
he did the only important thing. Oh, I didn't have money for the school. Okay, fine. That's fine. I had a scholarship. All right. But he paid for my English course. Do you
Mhm.
understand, Weber? I
Yeah.
think that the pieces of
Yeah.
this puzzle is so interesting,
Mhm.
you know, because when I think, yeah, we were really struggling with financial issues in my family, but my father could pay the English course. So that allows me to study until the proficient examination. So he was my helper. He
Mhm.
was really the guy who gave me the resource I needed.
Mhm.
And this is really um, part of this praxis with English.
Mhm. Mhm.
Understand?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a stepping stone, a very important, ground and a base for your practices, and you're actually making the most out of it, right? Because you
Sure.
took the opportunity and actually expanded, and you are taking the most out of this opportunity that your father gave to you, right?
That's very interesting. Yes, that's very interesting. Actually, I found conceptuology in 1991,
Mm-hmm.
but the first time I saw it, I was like, my mom was spiritist, like
Mm-hmm.
catechist, from Allan Kardec. And that was very good because my education was based on a spiritual um, thing. I didn't have problems when I saw that I saw spirits. So my mom say, that's fine, you know. Um, but I had this education. But when I found 1991, consensuality in 1991, I was not getting into it. I would just get into consensuality in 1998. It was a long time after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I had this slow, involving movement with consensualism. It was like, then I became a teacher in 2009 with the IIPC. Thank you, IIPC, for this graduation. And then I
Uh-huh.
started as a lecturer, and then and then I was like, but the things was kind of slow. It
Mhm.
really started to be serious. I mean, my participation, right? Not because, okay, let me explain that, not to be misunderstood here. I
Mhm.
became a teacher in 2009. I gave conceptuology class. That's fine. All these entry courses. I gave entry courses, like speeches in the public places. We used to do this. But when we start in 2020 to work with the online activities and we started doing activities in English,
Mhm.
then I felt it was going to take off.
Mhm.
My commitment to consensuality started to take off when we started doing things in English. That was a kind of perception.
Mhm.
That's the reason why, Weber, I think that all these recollections, all this, um, the recovery of the cons, right, from my this specific past life
Mhm.
was very important for me.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I think I got connected with this personality. I'm
Mhm.
not sure whether I was this man. I'm not saying I was. I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
trying to say to myself, I was not, because I wanted to prove me wrong. You
Mhm.
know, I want to prove me wrong. I want to know more about it. I want the facts to convince me. Mario, that's fine. You were him. Okay, great. But you know, this is the way I'm studying thing. I was trying to convince me, and but all these connections that I have known, I have studied, were really important for me. And I think that, as I said, um, I cannot say that I don't wish I were. I cannot say that I wish I were this guy,
Mhm.
because he was so special.
Mhm.
He's so intelligent. He's so special. I think I would have inherited a very good story, you know. And his story with George Eliot was fantastic, because when they
Mhm.
got together, George Eliot wrote only in her diary.
Mhm.
She was not a writer. She was not famous. She just wrote in the notebooks, like she put in the notebook her ideas and everything. She put in the notebook. And he said, "You write so well. You should publish this." "No, no, I cannot publish. I'm a woman." Said, "No, no, no. Let's resolve it. But you have to." So he insisted. He encouraged her to
Mhm.
publish what she was writing, and that was decisive for her to
Mhm.
become George Eliot.
Mhm.
Right? That was something really, really amazing. And then this woman wrote um, many books. And
Mhm.
she started, well, there's a list of, in 1857, she published A Scene of a Clerical Life. It was one of the famous books. In 1859, she wrote Adam Bede. Then The Mill on the Floss, which is another very famous book, in 1860. Silas Man in 1861. Romola in 1862. Felix Holt the Radical in 1866. And then she published Middlemarch in 1871. Daniel Derone was the last book in 1876, but Middlemarch in 1871. George Eliot, Decimates in 1878. Well, like 7 years after the publishing of the Middlemarch. And this is the Middlemarch, her book.
Mhm.
Kind of a break, isn't it?
Mhm.
Very.
Mhm.
And recently, the BBC, like 2024, had a kind of poll, not poll, a survey
Uh-huh.
with um, a literary critic all over the world. Then BBC selected 86 literary critics all over the world to choose the 5 most important books in British literature.
Mhm.
It was a BBC survey. And the result was, from 86 literary critic around the world, Middlemarch was the most important book ever written in British literature.
Wow.
Why? Because This book tells of the life in this provincial society in the Victorian age. So this is the book that depicts better the life in the Victorian age. This one.
Mhm.
When I say this, what I'm saying that it's a book from someone who used to write in her diaries,
Mhm.
and he was totally unaware of her potential, of her skills, of her talents. She would definitely die without publishing any book. First, because she didn't believe she was so good. Second, because it was very hard for her to publish as a woman. She had all the support from George Henry Lewes and concerning contact with the publishers, because he was already a very well known person, in the literary circle, because
This.
this guy published like 34 books,
Mhm.
and definitely that was fantastic if we think that she was not going to publish and he made her George
Mhm.
Eliot.
Mhm.
So and then we think this union had a story, had a purpose. It was not just relationship between men and women, sex and everything. So it was something more serious, because George Henry Lewes made George Eliot.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying, well, we never know, right? According to her personality, according to insistence of the George Eliot by saying publish, 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 it took a while until she finally decided. I think she was so certain that that was not something to be published,
Mhm.
that I'm not so sure that if George Henry Lewis hadn't said that, I think she would have published her ideas in first. But it was just ideas in on a diary, which she was not trying to write any novel. Just
Mhm.
when he insisted that she really started thinking as a novelist, but she was not thinking as a novelist. Well,
Uh,
I don't know what would have happened, but that's the way things happened. And I think that the role and the support of George Henry's in the George Eliot's life was determinant, was for her success, was very significant in this matter. So the thing is, what can I say? If you have an idea of, I was someone, the first thing is the emotions you have towards this personality, the feelings you have towards this personality, the parapsychic connections you may have, and fourth and most importantly, because you cannot depend on parapsychics, or you cannot depend on someone else's parapsychics to make you sure that you were a personality, or you know because it's very important to know who you were. I didn't have any kind of value to it.
mhm.
I didn't think it was important, definitely, but I changed my mind because I learned a lot by studying
Mhm.
George Hughes.
George Harris.
Their personalities are kind of mingled, sometimes
Uh-huh.
George Hill and George Hughes. But anyway,
They choose, first name, the same first name.
at the same
Actually,
first name, yes.
yeah.
So, Weber, today I changed completely my mind.
Mhm.
I thought like 10 years ago, I thought it was not important to know who I was. I don't want to know who I was. I don't think it's
Mhm.
important. The important is to know who I am. Okay, this
Mhm.
is very philosophical, um, um, interesting,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. Mhm.
in practice, it's something that no. If you have an idea of someone you think you are, or any kind of personality, if you're attracted to, connected with, so the best thing for you is to study its personality, because it will show you, and it will show also your strongest trait, not on strong traits, but the strongest trait,
More
right?
expressive. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. The
Mhm.
skills you have through lives, and the
Mhm.
skills that really makes you important as a person,
Mhm.
that teaches more, that makes you more evolutionary efficient. And
Mhm.
you say, I have this scientific way of thinking, you know, I'm not as dumb as I used to think. I have this. So we can to appropriate of these skills and traits right? And then when you know that you have a history, right, in this kind of thing, I think it makes you stronger. I
Mhm.
think it's kind of okay. You may not recover lucidity to assume who you are,
Mhm.
but you have more resources, you have more information to
Yep.
change your mind, right?
Mhm.
So you wake up to life and say, "Oh, yes, well, I have to assume it," you know. So I
Mhm.
think it's definitely very important. But emotions, feelings, or parapsychism, very important. But what I say is study the person. If the person wrote books, read the books the person wrote. Or
Mhm.
biographies are fantastic. Write biographies, check the facts,
Mhm.
analyze the behavior of the person, see if you think likewise. If you have this kind of behavior that connects you. Um, Today, I may tell you, Weber, forget everything I said. I was not John Hughes. I was not. I'm sure I was not. But this personality has 90% to do with me.
Uh-huh.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
This is the point, is when you learn, when you get the facts, right, from the books, from the biography, that you share ideas. When I
Mhm.
read him, what he said, I said, I would say this. And there is one point that was, this one is funny. There is one point I was not reading it. I was right. Because this Alice Kaminsky was focused on his scientific side and everything. I think we are coming to our time, right?
Yeah, but you still have 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. Okay, that's very interesting, right? So
Mhm.
there is one trait in
Mhm.
this personality, in this guy, that I said to myself, if
Mhm.
this guy didn't have this trait, I was definitely not him, because
Mhm.
it's a key trait.
Mhm.
I had like matched, all the information. Like I felt connected with lots of things, but if this guy was not like this, I was
Uh-huh.
not him.
Uh-huh.
And this was communicative skills.
Mhm.
If this guy was not social, if this guy was not communicative, if this guy didn't have good humor,
Mhm.
or if this guy was not a funny person,
Mhm.
it was not him. I was not
Mhm.
him. Because it's a key thing.
Mhm.
Because I
It's
make
part of
people
your
laugh. I like,
temperament.
yeah, I make people
Yeah.
laugh. I go to the supermarket and when I'm the cashier, I want to say funny things to make people laugh. This is one
Mhm.
behavior I have. I like
Mhm.
socialize. I love socialize. I love communication. I love to communicate with people. I love to make people smile. So, and it's really deep in me. Then I was reading. I don't know exactly the page, but I would like to read it for you because this biographer shows here what people used to say about him, his friends. I can't find here. So, yeah, but people say that he was a very nice person, very socializing, in very good humor. There was a guy who said, when George Henry Lewis comes, everybody's happy, everybody smiles, because he's funny. He has a good humor. He's very, um, um, you know, spirited, and people like him because of this, because he's a bon vivant, and said,
Uh-huh.
one more, tick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Well.
but I just found, because I was reading. So
Mhm.
study,
Great.
investigate seriously,
Yeah.
seriously, um, from books. That
Great.
was a very good conversation.
I
Well, you
was,
prepared you prepared lots of questions.
but I was just talking. I was just about to tell you that uh, I think that you read my mind because I was going to ask you to give, advice to, for those who are trying or starting to study, a key personality.
I think we can
What was
close with
your? key advice for those who are interested in studying past lives. And you just brought this as an answer without, having to wait for my question. So it
Sure.
was really great.
Yeah, just to
Well,
close it, it's exactly what I said, right? Exactly what I
mhm,
said. Read,
mhm,
study, investigate seriously from books, but also from that, you have lots of information you can have from parapsychism, your experience, your parapsychic experience, but also, and more importantly, the other people's experience and the information that they may see in you, because it's very important to have people's comments, and basically that's that. And go for
great.
this.
Yeah, I think that we have enough material to have another life in the future. If
In the life
yeah,
in future.
if you agree,
And
yeah.
just
Thank you.
something, just
Mhm,
something else. It's okay when you have a specific personality that you are
mhm,
researching,
mhm,
that may be important. But
mhm,
when you realize that the personality you study is a key personality,
mhm,
that's a sine qua non situation. You have to go
mhm,
for that. You have to dive into this, this
mhm,
study and investigation of this personality, because it's
mhm.
key.
Yeah.
This personality is what you have, from whom you have the most. So
Mhm.
go for that.
Great. Just like to share some final comments and contributions from the audience.
Luis Luna.
Eliana
Okay.
says, "Yeah, says thank you for the nice chat and thank you for sharing." And she found another coincidence, Louis Luna, the
She had
last
she
name.
had a life, Liliana. Allow me to say that she had a life in England as well. I think that our friendship comes from that time in 19th
Uh-huh,
century.
uh-huh.
Yes, I'm very close
Great.
to this woman. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she is. And another comment. And if you do consecutive as a school of consecutive personality, you learn many more techniques for your investigation. Well, thank
I
you,
will.
Eliana, for also
I will.
um, for advertising. The one of our courses is very interesting, and I think it's an extensive program that actually helps us deepen. And actually, most of the techniques you apply, they're also incorporated in the school and program of the school.
Sure.
Uh, and a final comment, Eduardo Doria from Curitiba, I think. Um, Thank you so
Okay,
much for
Eduardo.
sharing your investigating evidences of a past life with us. Well,
Yes, we thank you for the opportunity to share these ideas.
and I also like to thank you, Mario, for this wonderful talk. It was really nice, really interesting, enriching, and hope to have you back in the future opportunity here. Okay.
Yes, all the pleasure is mine. It's always good to talk about it. Very good,
Great.
Mr. Weber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario, and good evening, good night, everybody. For those who are in Brazil,
See you
see you
around.
soon.
Oh, let me say
Um,
something. If you are
yeah.
watching us, we have a complimentary in English this weekend at SEC, talking about universalistic GESCON or GESCONographic skill, right? Universalistic speaking. So I am already enrolled for this course. I invite you to do the experience with international teams, the
Mhm.
extra-physical teams, is really, really rich and thrilling. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always good to have. So if you are in Foz do Iguaçu,
And
make
it's
the most of it.
also another technique to actually trigger our memories from possible lives and experiences in English speaking countries. Very nice.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, thank you very much. Goodbye and see
See
you
you.
soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Yes.